Hello, everybody. Hello, Raimo. Nice to see you. All right, let's do another one. What is this? 175, I think. Number 175. I'm going to remind everybody that we do not put the ads on during the live stream, and then I add them afterwards. What else am I trying to tell people? I'll probably end up not doing this every single time, but um, and I want to remind you, if you want to ask questions earlier for next time, that you um, go to the website. I know that's a little bit of a schlep because um, it's not so convenient, right? The problem with not going through that schlep is if you want to ask your questions in advance, there's a good chance I won't see them, right? You can't trust YouTube's uh, comment section. There is sometimes that the comments come through and I don't get them. Now it's a very specific time, but you know, uh, I can't expect everybody to know, right? I mean, I could talk about it, but it's just better if you just go straight to the website and go to the video section. Hello, Gabriel, nice to see you. So yeah, and what else do we have? I forgot what was on the list. Um, So, what's in the news today? The news for this week is we're still working on the duet book. I did write a hello, Steve Dixon. Hello. I did write a blurb. So, you know what? This is always the hardest part of writing a book. When I say hard, I don't mean it takes more work. I'm not saying it takes more effort, but it it's hard for me to just even do this stuff. And so when I say the hardest part, I mean the stuff that just doesn't come natural to me. And in the professional world, they call it copy, writing the words about the book. So here we go. I'm going to read to you real quick the blurb for the new book. I'm clicking on the wrong stuff. Okay, the blurb. Here we go. It's loading. And the reason I'm sharing this, when I was done writing it, it was like, hey, this is actually pretty good. So, you know, here's the thing is I try not to just advertise. So there's rules you're supposed to follow. If you look at how people write books, right? Say, how do you write a book? Put that into if you put that into Google, they'll say, you got to do this, you have to do that. If you don't do this, people won't buy your book. But the thing is, a lot of that stuff goes against what I believe as a Christian. So there's stuff that you're supposed to do in a blurb that I won't do. Um, Maybe people on the surface can't tell the difference. But anyway, that's why. So, and the reason I mention that is because um, I want my blurb. I want people that read the blurb, and I don't pull this off every single time. Sometimes I'm under a deadline and I don't have time to think it through. So don't now take what I'm saying and go back to my old books and say, oh, well, you didn't do it that time. That's right. I didn't do it every single time. So let me just say, the way I'm trying to do that is that the blurb, just that people will just be blessed just by reading the blurb. Something in their life will be better just because they read the blurb. You know, hundreds more people will read the blurb than will buy the book. And that's true of every book. Right? Anyway, let me read this to you real quick. Reward yourself with many hours of musical merrymaking while also honing your hard-earned trumpet skills. Are you struggling to see results after so many hours of dedicated practice? Now, that's something they do tell you to do that I don't have a problem with. Um, they tell you to find a pain point. And so the reason that doesn't go against my Christian beliefs is because how are you to help people with the problems that they have if you can't point out what the problems are? So this is not, I don't think that's evil. So are you struggling to see results after so many hours of dedicated practice? You religiously practice your fundamentals. You ambitiously attack challenging etudes and solo works. But for some reason, you are not seeing the kinds of results you've been expecting. Sometimes this can be because you don't spend enough time making music with other people. It's no coincidence that the students who most stubbornly refuse to play music with other people are also the ones who see the slowest progress. As a teacher with over 40 years of experience, Eddie Lewis recognized this phenomenon early in his, I gotta fix that typo, earlier in his teaching career. That's why he always strongly recommends ensemble participation to each of his students. Making music with other musicians is the application stage of learning a new skill. Ensemble participation forces us to execute new skills in real time, sourcing them from the subconscious part of our minds. Unfortunately, many of us don't have enough access to formal ensembles. That's where trumpet duets come in. You receive the same benefits from playing trumpet duets as you do playing in a concert band or church orchestra. 40 trumpet player duets, that's the name of the book, takes those benefits up a notch. This book is designed to use the skills you've worked so hard to acquire. In other words, um, some duet books have like random skills. I'm systematically hitting specific skills throughout the book. Take a deep dive into 40 trumpet player duets and make your trumpet beast roar. I might get rid of that part. This is all rough draft. Make your trumpet beast roar. I don't know. That's a little bit over the top. Anyway, let me get on with the questions. I'm I'm just usually I can't get the stuff to flow like that. And so this time that's why I read it to you. Um Now the stuff that I'm writing, and see, this is what I meant. I want the blurbs to bless people. Right there in that blurb is a lesson. And what is that lesson? If you're not doing ensemble time, that can. No, notice that I didn't say it in an absolute. I did not say it will. I did not say you have to, because that's just not true. I put the words it can. It can lead to lack of progress. People who play an ensemble have to source because it is in real time, and that's what I said in the blurb. It's in real time. So you're you're taking all those skills that you've been working on all this time, and when you play duets, you're forced to pull on those skills in real time, which forces it to come from your subconscious mind. And the more you exercise your subconscious mind, the better you get at doing that. So what happens then? You get better at sight reading. You know, a lot of people say duets are better for sight. I mean, are answer for sight reading. Yes, if you are a terrible sight reader, duets can be a answer to that. Why do I say can be? Because if you didn't learn those skills in the first place, it's not going to help. If you don't, if you have not mastered the tonalization studies in every key, then when those keys come up, it doesn't matter that you've sight read, so much if you can't play on that key. And the same thing is true for rhythms. The same thing is true for every musical aspect that we do. You have to train first. Do the practice first, and then you apply it. Anyway, Gabriel says, Eddie, is there any book where the tonalization studies are not written in condensed mode? What do you mean by condensed mode? Do you mean like the way it is in the daily routines, the Chops Express, and the Chops books, where it's one exercise for every key? Is that what you mean by condensed? If that is what you mean, then the answer is yes. I do have tonalization. Yes, okay. I do have tonalization study books. Not all of them are physical. So some of them are only uh, ebooks. So we just finished the Pioneer level one, and we know for sure. So it's I've got so many books, I can't keep track of what's physical, what's digital, and all that. I can read from you. I read for you what I've got on the Tiger Music website. In fact, I can send you a link that has all of them. Uh, um, so we have not published every level yet. So let me click on there we go. So here's a link that will take you to all of the ones we have on our website. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy them on my website. If they are physical, you can get them on Amazon. You can get them on Lulu. Some of them you can get on Barnes and Noble and stuff. If they're on Barnes and Noble, they're usually on the European stores as well, European bookstores. Um, and if they're digital and you don't want to do my website, then you can go to Sheet Music Plus or what's the other? Hal Leonard. Anyway, let me put this link. So, what's the book Total Tonalization? Total Tonalization was the book that I wrote when I didn't know I was going to write a bunch of them. So it's the tonalization studies spelled out, written out in every key, 20 exercises in every key, and for the player level. And the reason I wrote it back then was because I was teaching at a high school, which I'm real hush hush about that because I'm not officially ever teaching at schools anymore. Um, but this was a time when money was short and there was an opening, so I went and taught. And what I did with the students was I gave them assignments out of this new book. And so yeah, so I've got here. So the total tonalization is the trumpet player level. Then the rest of them have the correct names, right? Uh, Apprentice tonalization studies, Trumpet Pioneer tonalization studies, Trumpet Pro tonalization studies, and Trumpet Tyro. We don't have the two highest levels. We don't have the master level yet. We don't have the what do you call it? The virtuoso level yet. We don't have those two quite yet. That's on the list. This is an ongoing problem, I guess you could call it, where every time I publish a book, there's new books waiting. I think I did this before in the Q and A, where read, I counted, not read, I counted how many books are on the to-do list right now. let me do that again because I want to give you. Hello, Cardo. Cardo says hi, Eddie and friends. Um, so this duet book is the next one, and to tell you the truth, that's 4 books for the year, and I was gonna try to squeeze in some more, but the thing is, when I'm doing the books, I can't get other stuff done, and I feel like my life has been on hold for 6, 7, 8 months now because of these books. So um, if I follow the order that I have on this list, which I don't always do that, if I follow that order, then the master tonalization would be the next book. And um, yeah, I'm just not going to do that this year, I don't think. Let me see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. It's like 2 dozen, 2 dozen books on my to-do list right now. Some of them, the Stages book, I've been telling you guys about the Stages book. The Stages book is done. I just need to go back and re-edit it because it ended up not being a child's book. Originally, I wanted it to be a short children's book, but I kept getting deeper and deeper, and the language kept getting more serious and more serious. And I just have to one day sit down and change all the language. It's been done for, I think, 4 years now. And you would think, okay, well, you should go get that finished. Um, but I think I told you guys before, we were talking last week about the trumpets and how was it the trumpets? Anyway, I think we were talking about how I don't just do stuff just because I want to. There has to be enough reasons to do it to justify doing what needs to be done. So yeah, and it's the same thing. I don't. Let me tell you this, and I think a lot of people might not know this, might have other assumptions. I don't write books to make me look. It's not. In other words, it's not an egotistic thing. I'm not. I'm not. Um, the purpose of the books is not to enhance my image or anything like that. It does enhance my image, but that's not the purpose. Um, the greatest purpose is to get as much of what I can do to help people out there to the people that need that help, if that makes sense. And the way I can gauge whether or not people are actually using this stuff, that's why, for example, the last book. Well, that's some other news for you, by the way, as a tangent. I did finish the Trumpet Chops Pioneer. The content for that book. The book is not ready yet. But the content is, I might release it as a ebook first, and that way we don't have to do all the fancy covers and all that stuff. Um, we do put effort into the covers, but I'm just saying. Um, but yeah, so going back to what I was saying, it's the books. One way that I judge whether people are using the books is whether it sells or not. And I know that can look on the surface as if I'm just trying to make money, which who could fault me for that? That's the weird thing that I always always thought that was really, really weird. People who criticize you for um, wanting to get paid for what you do, but if you don't get paid, you can't put food on the table. I don't understand that. This is not. I'm not a high school student. My mommy and daddy are not paying my bills. you know. So, and I don't. It's not like I live a luxurious life. So yeah, this is what I do for a living. But how I decide which books are going to be published in what order is based on whether they sell or not. Not because I need the money, but because I want to put the effort where it's going to help the most people. And that's why I hesitate on. I told you that book's been done for 4 years. Now the the Chops Pioneer book is done. That will probably sit for a while before I actually truly publish it. And why? Because there aren't going to be a lot of people that buy that. Not according to how I've seen in this industry. So yes, and what that means is when people don't buy it, it means they don't need it. That's how this works. So I hope that makes sense. Cardo says, Eddie, is it possible to play high notes on a deep mouthpiece with a big backbore? Yes, sir. Now, you know what? It's weird. I haven't played high in months. I haven't had any high note gigs lately. And I mean, in terms of, playing music, I do. All right, let's put it this way. Hello, Free. Um, when I say high, I'm talking about the stuff above what I practice because I stopped practicing the really, really high stuff. So let's put it this way. I haven't played a Super C in at least, I want to say 4 or 5 months. In fact, you could probably be certain that I haven't played anything above G above high C. I haven't played anything higher than that in that same amount of time. Okay, so this is not just a deep mouthpiece, this is super deep. My whole fingernail fits in there, okay? And I have not played a Super C. I'm a little nervous now because I don't practice that. So let's see. And also, it does have a very big backbore too. Yeah. So you can play high. It's gonna have on this mouthpiece. It's gonna have a washed out dead sound. It's not the right sound for that register. I don't know how much you can hear on, but that was a Super C. My first Super C in 5 or 6 months, 4 or 5 months. I don't know. I'm not keeping track. I don't say, oh, I got to play high notes today. I'm not like that. And I don't particularly like playing in that register. It's stuff I do when it's appropriate. And so anyway, but yes, you can hear that I can play the note. But you can also hear, first of all, that I'm struggling a little bit. And I don't think that's because I haven't done it in so long. Because back when I was playing those notes a lot, it was still a struggle on this mouthpiece. Okay, now let's switch mouthpieces to a actual lead trumpet mouthpiece, not that one. So I don't know if you noticed, but that was a super D, not just a super C. And I'm trying to find my lead mouthpiece. Now, what is a lead mouthpiece? A lead mouthpiece is the opposite of what I just played on. It's a shallow mouthpiece that gives you a more centered sound in the upper register. There's my lead mouthpiece, my current lead mouthpiece. Anyway, you get the idea, right? Um, the sound on that note is a better sound than what I did on this. So, and like I said, I don't like playing those notes. I really don't. If I can go, I'm happy to tell you I've gone 5, 6 months, 4 or 5 months without playing those notes. I am happy to say that. I don't want to have to, the only time I like playing those notes is in the middle of an improv, and in that moment it seemed appropriate, which happens very rarely. It only really happens for me, maybe in a salsa thing. I remember the first time I was a guest soloist with HSPVA, that's the High School for the Performing and Visual Arts. They featured me on one of my compositions with the big band. And I remember in the middle of my improvisation, I hit an E above super C, and I thought, well, that sounds good. And so I decided to hold it. So there's a video out there somewhere. I've never heard it, but this is how I remember it. There's a video out there somewhere with me playing my original composition with the HSPVA jazz band, and I'm playing an E above super C for, I don't know, 2 measures, 2.5 measures, something like that, with a little bit of vibrato on it. Now, people like that kind of stuff, and I don't know if I ever heard that I would even like it. But when I was doing it, it sounded appropriate. So, hello, Nicholas. Nicholas says Psalm 153-6. Appreciate hearing biblical sound music from your channel. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you like it. Cardo says, wow, impressive high register. Steve Dixon says, as a senior citizen attempting to be a comeback player from way back, I have been using Eddie's expansion tonalization studies. Today I finished the 12th major scale. All right. Congratulations, Steve. That's always, to me, that's a big deal. That's a big deal, especially if when you get back around it the second time, you do all 12 keys and then something in your head changes. Then you go all 12 keys again and there's something. After you've done all of them twice, I would recommend that you try doing them by memory the third time. And when I say the third time, spend a week or two on each key. But yeah, congratulations. He says, Eddie, what would you suggest next? More skills or a period of reviewing the major skills I just finished? Okay, so I would do 3 times. And like I said, 1 or 2 weeks on each key. And then the second time you get all the way through, that's good. The third time, do it without looking at the music. That sounds, when I first ask my students to do that, it almost terrifies them because they think there's no way they can play that much music by memory. But it's a pattern, and it's easy to remember the pattern. And I promise you, if you can do it by memory, your music will take a huge leap forward. a huge leap forward. Now, I don't always talk about that anymore. Um, I don't know why. I have seasons with this stuff. I go through seasons in my teaching. And, I remember the first time I recognized that I had seasons is because there was a time when I was teaching what I called back then, this is the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and I was calling it totally positive body language. Now, the reason I was teaching that and emphasizing it so much was because all the students I was working with were having trouble with negative body language while they played. And when they focused on having positive body language, that's when they played better. Now, that's not necessarily something for everybody, and I think that's why I have these seasons. So, but yes, um, for a long time, I was telling people you should get to where you're playing all of those skills by memory. So that I would suggest, as far as the skills go, that should be the next step, is try to do them by memory. You can do one time around again through all 12 of them, and then the third time do it by memory. Free says, the lead mouthpiece you just played is a piece made by Rich. No, um, this is a Warburton mouthpiece, 2-piece. It's a Warburton is the brand that I sell here. In fact, I keep forgetting to contact them because I have the way I do it is the customer keeps buying the mouthpiece from the kit until I order. So the customer has the mouthpiece and I have to order it, but I keep forgetting to order it. So that just reminded me. Ha, Cardo says it's almost Sandoval territory. The thing about high notes, the high note guys. So what I just played, the D above super C, in all of Maynard Ferguson's career, I think he had like 4 of those. I don't know. I'm talking about in recordings. I'm not talking about live. Live, he probably did more of that. So I've actually played higher in my career live than what Maynard played on the recordings. But what happened with Maynard? And I know that a lot of Maynard disciples can freak out about that because they think I'm talking badly about Maynard. And it's actually the opposite. I'm actually complimenting. Maynard sounds like a high note guy. I don't. Arturo sounds like a high note guy. I don't. I sound like a jazz player playing high notes. There's others that I admire like that. And by the way, I do admire them. I admire what Arturo does. I admire what Maynard did. There's other guys like that I admire. What's his name? Well, actually, this guy is more like a jazz player. He's more like me, or I'm more like him. That would be offensive. Um, what's his name? John Faddis. John Faddis is more like a jazz guy that plays high, which I hope he would take that as a compliment. Some people would say that also Maynard was like that, but I don't hear that in Maynard's playing. Maynard always had that style. In fact, we know that Maynard started that style, right? Maynard, when he was with the what's the name of the band? In the 50s, I think it was. The Art of the Big Band, I think, was the name of the album that I've got that he does all that stuff on. Kenton. I knew there was a K in there. Stan Kenton Band. And that's when Maynard was with Kenton, that's when he really started to um, set that style, that high note style. And really, the rest of the guys that play like that are playing like Maynard. At least that's my perspective of how that stuff works. But yeah, Free says, I always had problems with very shallow mouthpieces, so I surrendered to this kind of pieces and I use the Bach 5C and 7C. Of course, I'm not a lead player, but they work fine. Yes. Maynard Ferguson. And I don't know how to spell it. Let me do a search real quick to see how you spell his. Okay, Ferguson. I'll put it in the text. That way you have the. Oops. Let's see here. I like Maynard Ferguson playing. Some people thought he got too cheesy. I started hearing him on the cheesy stuff, and I actually remember that stuff fondly. And I got to hear him. I don't know. It was like half a dozen times when I lived in El Paso. I got to hear him live at least half a dozen times in El Paso. He had great, great shows, and it wasn't pyrotechnic shows. He was just playing the horn, and it was like so exciting. So Gabriel says, Eddie, can I use the articulation studies to make some music, like phrasing or adding some styles at the end of the routine? And so my official answer on that is that no, that's not how my system works. That's my official answer. Is that you should have, because what we're striving for in the all the exercises, we're striving for a set air, and you can't do phrasing with a set air. We want the air to be exactly the same all the way through the exercise to get the most benefit. That said, it's important to do what works for you. So if someone says, what's your system? Then that's my system. My system is going to say that the um, the best way to do it is without trying to make music out of it. I'll never forget, I had a student, because a lot of people are taught that they should be musical on all things, whether it's exercises or music, they should make music out of all of it, right? And so I had a student one time, and I only told him like 6 weeks into his lessons that he's not supposed to use vibrato and he's not to phrase and stuff like that. That I want him to start playing them straight flat. And he actually got angry with me. He says, "Why didn't you tell me that in the beginning?" And I remember the look on his face when I said, "Because I don't have time to write another book." And what he so the way he worded the question was, "Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" Um, there's so much wrong with his playing, and the same is true for every student. So don't think that I'm saying that he was a terrible player. No, but the list of things that we have to cover in the lesson is pages and pages and pages long. So what I meant by I don't have time to write another book, I don't have time to list everything that's wrong with his playing. And if you took lessons with me, and I don't mean you, I'm talking about anyone who's watching this video. If you come to lessons with me, I'm not going to tell you every single thing that's wrong. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with what we can do now. Because a lot of that stuff that you are doing wrong, we can't fix until you fix something else. A lot of that stuff is buried and is inaccessible until we get something else out of the way. And that's how it happened in his lesson, is that we reached that point where now, okay, so we got this done, we got that done, we got that done. Let's take a look now and stop doing the music on these exercises. And he didn't like that at all. Now I consider him a good friend. So Gabriel says, I mean, I first do everything as written, then I redo the articulation with some style. That I can live with. Now, so I didn't finish what I was going to say. Sorry about that. We have to do what works for us. My system is getting more and more narrow, and progressively more narrow. The way I do it is starting to become the way I do it. But I didn't get where I am today by doing it exactly the way someone else said to do it. Now, the way I always did it, the way I got to where I am today was to take what someone else said, embrace it fully, long enough for me to understand how it works, why it works. This has always been the way I've done it. If I wasn't this way, I would have no books today at all. Or the books that I had would not be of any value whatsoever because they wouldn't be rooted in what's already out there. What I publish is rooted in what's already out there in the trumpet community. The greats came before me. I'm standing on their shoulders. And so the way I did this was I embraced the whole thing. And then after I reached the point where I had an understanding of why and how it worked, or even just that it did work, then I could take the elements of that I needed and apply it to what I was doing. And if there was something that I didn't need, I would let that go. And I encourage everybody to do it that way. So if someone wants to know what is my system, then the official word is don't do that. That said, if you've been doing my system and you've been at it for at least a year, maybe a couple years, if you've been doing my stuff for that long, it's time to do what you think can make it better for you. If I were to be the kind of person that says, no, that's not right, don't do it that way. If I was like that, it would be like that guy in the Bible that um, he went to the guy who he owed so much money and said, please, please don't throw me in jail. Please don't throw me in jail. And the guy says, okay, I forgive you your debt. Go ahead and be free. And then on his way home, someone came up to him that owed him money. And he says, pay me what you owe me. Right? If I was like that, it would be like that story in the Bible. By the way, that didn't really happen. Sometimes it bothers me when people take the parables and argue about them as if they really happened. The parables are stories. It didn't really happen. It's a story that Jesus taught to represent other things. So, like for example, when people talk about the what do you call it? The prodigal son, right? There, that's a story. It represents. It's not a story about. Yes, it is a story about inheritance and stuff like that, but the meaning of the story is something deeper. Anyway, so yes, what you're saying, Gabriel, is something I would agree with. That sounds good to me. Free says your idea of doing tonguing before flexibility gave me a lot of benefits. I did the opposite for years. I mean, flex studies before tonguing studies. So I do actually do flexibility studies before the tonguing, but then we add the flexibility back in after the tonguing. So you're right. You are supposed to do, in my system, you are supposed to do flexibility before you do tonguing. But then after you've done your linear tonguing, the stuff that's scale wise, after you've done the scale wise stuff, you do the interval, the articulation intervals, is what I've been calling it lately. And yes, there's a lot of benefit to that. There's a lot of benefit. In my short warm-up, I have a warm-up. It's only 2 pages long, but it's based on the same system that the physical trumpet pyramid that the rest of the books are based on. And those 2 exercises are the same exact exercise, except they're slurred first and then they're tongued. You would think it would be the other way around because it's easier to tongue it than it is to slur it. But that we're trying to keep to the physical trumpet pyramid. So, well, I'm glad that that's been helping. I'm glad to hear that you're benefiting from that. Very happy to hear that. All right, what else? Any other questions? Let me see if anything has popped up at the website. Normally, I wouldn't do this in the middle of a lesson. I mean, middle of the Q and A. Nope, nothing. Okay. Cardo says, what is your ideal quick warm-up just before a gig? That really depends. Most of the time, I don't warm up. Almost most of the time. If I feel stressed for some reason, I might do. I don't know if this is a variation of the Schlossberg, and I've showed you guys this before. Now I put fermatas on it and I play super, super, super soft. When I do this exercise, fermatas on all the notes and super, super soft. And I'll do that down to F sharp. Sometimes that's as far as I go with the warm-up. And yes, if you're paying attention, it is the same thing I do for a warm down. So yeah, that's. But seriously, most of the time I don't warm up, and I don't know if this is because of John Faddis. John Faddis. You know that story about the guy before he did the 4-minute mile, nobody thought it was possible. Have you guys heard that story? Look up the story about the 4-minute mile. If you don't know this story, this is amazing psychology, right? Before he broke the 4-minute mile, we're talking about running. Before he broke the 4-minute mile, nobody was doing it. They all thought it was impossible to run a mile in under a minute, in under 4 minutes. Once he broke the 4-minute mile, everybody was doing it, and they actually shaved it down even farther. So there's this thing that happens where we think something's not possible, and then we see someone do it, and it's like, oh, it is possible. And so it can totally change the way you think. right? And so I was at this master class. I used to teach at HSPVA. I mentioned HSPVA earlier when I was talking about being featured with the band. Um, Now, I was only featured with them late into when I was teaching there. So it wasn't like I was featured there early on. They didn't do that kind of thing. Um, the people who were guest soloists normally weren't in on the faculty, is what I'm saying. So I think it was actually kind of odd, kind of unusual that they actually even asked me to do it. But which I consider that an honor, seriously. But and why am I talking about this? What am I talking about? I had a oh, John Faddis. Sorry about that. I just like spaced out. So we had, while I was teaching there, we had all kinds of wonderful guest artists, all kinds of people who, because everybody knew about HSPVA. If they were traveling through, they would say, "Hey, let me come over and do a master class at the school." So all these famous musicians came through and gave master classes, and I was, of course, always invited to go check them out. And John Faddis came, and he had just flown in from Japan. And someone asked him about warm up, and he says, "I don't warm up." And he picked up his horn, and the first note that came out of his bell was a D above super C. He went, then played a jazz line, like, and then ends in the lower register. That was his first note since he left Japan. And I thought, that kind of breaks a lot of molds right there. Huh? That breaks a lot of myth busting, that you need to have a warm up. And the truth is, when I got here to Houston, the bands were still, and I actually prefer that old way to the new way, believe me, the bands were still very strict. You were not to warm up on the gig. When we were doing the society stuff, you did not warm up. It was not, there were certain rules. You didn't warm up on the gig, well, specifically on the bandstand, I mean. You didn't warm up on the bandstand. You did not greet each other, say hello, and shake hands and stuff like that, because that makes it look like the band hasn't been playing. And you don't cut jokes and have fun, because people, when they're paying for a band like that, they want to know they're getting the best, and the best doesn't screw around. So the image that they wanted to portray was people who took this job seriously. Today, all three of those is flipped around. Now people warm up wherever they want to warm up, and um, you meet each other and have fun on the gig. I'm not so sure that's better. So I so much enjoyed when the gigs were more serious. I feel today like I don't belong on the bandstand because I'm there being serious and they're there screwing around. So, does that make sense? Anyway, um, yeah. So warm up was not allowed. If you were gonna warm up, you either did it in your car, or backstage, or at home before you left. It just wasn't done. And no, that wasn't every single gig, but that was a lot of gigs that you weren't allowed to warm up like that. And so yeah, when John Faddis comes and shows that he can start on a super D, a jazz line, and he said before you know what it was like? It was like playing 8 ball on the billiards, where you're supposed to say which ball is going to go in what hole. I always thought that was amazing. I'm lucky to get any ball in any hole. I'm not going to play that game, right? I don't want to have to tell you that, oh, this yellow ball is gonna go in that left corner. No, not gonna happen. So, but he said, I'm gonna start on Super D, and bam, that's where it was with no warm up. So, but yes, if I feel like I do have to do a warm up, I'm just going to do E. Okay, so there is another one I'll do if I've got more time and it's not going to be bothering anybody. I have a variation, if you want to call it, of the Chickwit studies. It used to be a free download on my website. I don't think it's there anymore. Um, it's an expansion study based on the Chickwits. So you guys know the first one. Instead of going and then taking a breath and do like how everybody does. Excuse me, doing it like everybody does it. Instead of that, I go higher as I go lower. So the first one, and I also do a bend on that first note instead of fingering it. Take a breath, then the next one. And then as I go down, it goes up, and by the time I get to the end, I'm playing up to high C. Now, the reason I don't do that one as often is because I don't play that one softly. You don't do the Chickwitz exercise softly. Never, if you're going to do it the way it's meant to be done, you don't play it soft. It's supposed to be almost full volume. Otherwise, you're not getting the benefit of the exercise. At least that's my interpretation of how that's supposed to be done. So those are the two things I do. I do that slurring thing with the I keep wanting to say focus. It's not focus. That's the second thing that just lost my head. I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. I said the name earlier. It's not coming back now. So those are the two things I would do. I also often will just improvise some notes if I have to. Like if I have less time, if I have only 2 minutes or something, then I'll just improvise something. All right. James says, any thoughts on why I have trouble getting the first pedal C and B to sound, but I can go lower all the way down to double pedal C? That's because you're in the middle of a node right there. Now, if you play that C, the C and the B, 1, 2, and 3. Now, that's not the best I've ever done it, but it's a lot easier that way than if you try to play it open. I do both, by the way, every day. I do both every day. That's not coming out right now. But anyway, you get the point. It's harder to do it with that fingering. If you try to do it open, it's going to be you're on a, maybe I shouldn't say on a node. You're actually off of a node. What might be a more accurate way to put it. And it just the horn rejects that note. That's why we practice that note to make it centered, which I did not do right now. That never bothered me. Sometimes my pedal C's pop out. Sometimes my pedal C's don't pop out. It never bothered me because That's not the point. If you stress over the perfection of the pedal tones, um, I don't know. That's a weird thing to me. Remember my saying, all physical work should be for musical reasons. And it's trying to play those notes on a regular basis that gives you the benefits. Mastering them gives you no benefits whatsoever. Trying to master them does, mastering them does not. So you don't stress. That's the difference. I know that sounds like double speak. You don't stress over it. I'm talking about your mental state. Don't stress over it. Anyway, Free says, have you ever thought about publishing your book in bass clef? I have thought about that. Um, it's not exactly the same. Um, I don't think, now, don't get me wrong, people have used my method in the bass clef, on trombone, and some people on tuba. Some people have used my method that way, and they've gotten some benefit out of it. I don't think there's as much to gain on those instruments as there is for the trumpet. And I won't go into the reasons right now because we're out of time. We're actually over time. But yes, given it a lot of thought, and this demonstrates what I mean by, even though I'm making money, the point of looking at the sales is to see who needs it. Um, Knowing that I could make more money by, I think I don't know what it is. I think trombone players are more supportive. I think if you get trombone players to um, like your product, you can sell a lot more. That's just my understanding. It might just be because there's less competition. I don't know. Everybody's got a trumpet book, right? So, and you know, if I wanted to just make money, I would do it. But what I'm really into is helping people get where they want to go. That's if people don't believe that about me, then they're not really paying attention. And I don't think that my method is as effective for trombone players as it is for trumpet. I really don't. Even the duet books, we even spent some time putting together the celebrations book. On my hard drive somewhere is a bass clef version. I didn't finish it because the bass clef is actually wider, and a lot of the spacing didn't fit anymore, and I would have to go through and put a lot of effort into reformatting the book. And it's when I weigh how much that's going to help trombone players, I'm like, that's not really going to help trombone players. Why am I going to invest all that effort into them? I hope that makes sense. Richie says, thanks. Um, he also says, do you know Till Bronner, a German guy who plays the trumpet very well? Yes, of course I do. Um, um, if I'm not mistaken, he's on my list of people you're supposed to be listening to. Let me look up and make sure. But yes, I think he's on my list. If he's not, I will keep it open and add him because that's one of the people that's supposed to be on there. So no, I guess not. Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it open. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. When I first put that page together, Oh, do you know where I know this guy from? That's why he's not on there. I knew the name. That's why he's not on there. He's a jazz guy, isn't he? Yes, he's a jazz guy. Okay, let me tell you why I know his name. I was flying back from South Africa, and almost every time we took Lufthansa airlines, and I always listen to whoever they have for the jazz stuff. And that's where I know his name. I listened to all his recordings he had on the flight. And I looked him up when I got back. I even think that maybe we're friends on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Because I looked him up and um, yeah, that's where I know him from, is that flight. No, I don't have him on as a friend on Facebook, but I will add him. Yeah, I thought, hey, this is some great music. I think at the time, if I'm not mistaken, he had a album that was using scenery or something like that. I can't remember exactly, from Canadian stuff. I think it was a Canadian concert, maybe. I don't remember. But I was very impressed with his playing. And that's a strange place to find a new trumpet player, right? On a flight. But yeah, was very happy to hear him play. So that's where I know his name. Anyway, I'm going to say thank you to all of you for hanging out. This was a good one. And we'll see you next week, I think. And God bless you. Oh, let me remind you that if you want to be on the list, there's a sign up thing for WhatsApp on the description of this video. So go ahead and add yourself on that. All right. So God bless you guys. We'll see you next time. Have a great week.